Hello friends and welcome to Rapid Flow. Today we're going to be reviewing the SPL Vitalizer Mk3. We're going to be listening to it in the context of electronic music as always on Rapid Flow. And right now I have it inserted on the mix you're hearing in the background using Prism Orpheus converters. Let's have a listen. So this is a super powerful, weird, psychoacoustic unit. I actually can really recommend the video that Hermann Gier, who is one of the founders of SPL, made. I'm going to link it below, about how this unit came into existence. It was a defining unit for SPL, and I think, yeah, one of the top-selling audio units definitely in the end of the 80s and beginning of the 90s. Kind of, it used to be that anyone that had a studio in that time had one of these somewhere. And yeah, I mean, it's on the third generation now. They're very interesting devices. So what the controls are that you have at your disposal here, and the weird way in which they are all interconnected somehow. So we start off with a drive, which is self-explanatory, and important to know is that everything that happens in this device is parallel. So your normal signal goes through it unaffected, and then everything it adds comes on top. It's not just an EQ, it's not just a compressor, it also does stuff in the micro timing of signals, which leads to an unmasking effect. It's all very weird and very crazy. The origin story of it is amazing, how this device came to be. It's one of these very, very original circuits that are out there. You know, there's like, you know, a handful of devices like that can do so much with so few controls in a very small package. So we have the drive, which is, you know, obviously how loud you're going into the processing chain. We have dial, which affects the bass towards soft or tight. We have a compressor to tame its effect, which is a one-knob compressor that just you sync it into the signal. We have a mid-high tune, which is basically an EQ in this combination. And it's interesting to see that this is inversed. So this is low mids or mids going up. Then we have a high frequency coil EQ, which is just very pleasing. It's a really nice way to add frequencies which is affected by this intensity. And there's a stereo expander, which is feeding inverted phase of the left-right to the other channel, and then you can make things very, very wide with it, but of course you can also get out of phase, so you have to be careful not to overdo it with this one. Now, where this gets weird is that everything that you see in this section, as you will see, there are sections on the device. All this stuff interplays with each other and affects each other in weird and miraculous ways. And the original circuit that they had like dozens of different settings and trimmers and whatnot. And funnily enough, they had already made faceplates for a device they were planning, and then they had to somehow get the device to function with the holes and functionality that was available on the faceplate, which is how they managed to get so much control into actually very few buttons. And this is a device that I can also recommend for beginners because it's actually super easy to get your head around, and you kind of, more than anything, just use it by intuition and by listening to you and seeing where you need to go with it. So let me show you a couple of examples of how this interplays with each other. For example, the process dial will also affect how much of this bass sound is being fed into the signal. And what the process does is not only boost the high frequencies, but there's also a cut below the point that you select, which again interplays with the amount of bass sound. So depending on whether or not you have process high or low, the bass, soft or tight, is going to be bigger, and there's going to be a bigger dip below. And then, yeah, the compressor is kind of the one that's kind of easy to understand, that it just compresses the low end. All right, let me just go through some tweaking on this so that you get an idea of how many different directions you can take a track in. And what you're hearing now is a track that's in production. It's not properly mixed yet. It's kind of, it's okay, but it doesn't sound ready yet. And with this device, you can actually get to a place where it sounds really close to done. And that is actually a place where I see this device also is for playing live sets. But yeah, let's talk about that in a minute. Let's start by listening. So what I'm doing now is sort of the recommended flow that Herman from SPL suggested, which is to start with process and tune in your mids. So I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do the low end and check if it needs a little bit of compression. Then I'm going to do the high shelving boost here, and finally the stereo expander. That's sort of the order we're going to do this in. Did you hear how that removed the low end to some degree? Let me show you what happens when I now bring in the processing. So the low end boost. So as it says, there's a very interesting interplay between the processing you do towards the mid frequencies and the unmasking, and then the low end soft or tight boost. What you read is what you get, and they all work together, so you can get to a lot of different places sonically with just these three dials. The stereo expander is super nice. So right now I've gone for the tight setting quite intensely with a mid process from 2.8 kilohertz. Oh, what is it? Yes, 1.8 kilohertz and up. A pretty high boost on the filter up here, and mid stereo expander. Let's have a listen. Also be interesting to have a look at this with the spectrum analyzer. Let's see what happens if we exaggerate now with the stereo expander. On my screen here you can see there's a correlation meter, so if that starts to drop then we're starting to get anti-phase. Let's have a listen. So it starts to go down, but it's still reasonable. What I've just realized could be really interesting, just to test, just for fun, I'm going to change this from the mix bus to that kind of chordy sound that's playing, because I think it would be really interesting to see what it sounds like if you make something like that super wide. So I've moved over the SPL insert, you can see it here running through those Prism Orpheus converters, and I've dropped it on that harmony chordy sound. And I'm going to reset this to neutral to also give you an idea of what this sounds like if you're using it as an insert on a single instrument. Let's have a listen. The problem I have is always when people send me devices to test and mess around with them, I end up going, God, I kind of want to keep that now. It is super cool to make stuff super wide within the mix, and of course there's no problem doing that on a chordy thing like that. It's not going to make such a bad negative impact as if when it's your whole mix. where I would be a bit more careful with making things super wide. Okay, I will not buy more gear. I will not get more gear. All right, going back now to putting it on the master bus. And actually, I'm gonna just solo the low end because I think that will be very interesting also. Hear what it does to a fully mono signal, so we're just going to put it on the kick and see what happens if I use the stereo expander on it. That's super nice. So, well, as you would expect, there is no difference left-right between my kick, and it's not doing anything to it. So that is very, very cool, actually. That's super useful. Okay, let's go back to the full mix and do a few more tweaks, and then I'll give you my thoughts on this device and who it's probably best suited for. So yeah, very, very interesting. The different sonic territory that you can take your track with this. So who is this suitable for? Where do I see its like primary use cases? I think if you're an electronic music live act and you need a box that can make everything sound correct when you're playing in places very, very quickly with very few knobs, this is fantastic. However, when I was using it also on that chordy sound, I realized I really, really like what it's doing to that pad width and giving it more body or more presence. It does a very interesting job also of unmasking the signal, which is something that it gets used for a lot also, where it is splitting transients and body of sound a little bit, so you get a bit more punch and a bit more clarity in your signal. Very, very interesting for that also. Yeah, so as a kind of one device with which you have access to a really interesting low-end boost, which can be either bloomy and warm and big, or kind of tight and punchy and precise with a compressor. And then you get like a mids kind of clarity punch combined with a high shelving coil filter or EQ that is really nice to just bring some life to your mix. And then finally, with the stereo expander, it has a lot of options in there. And it's super easy to use because you don't really know what you're doing. You just have to listen. It's not one of these devices that you can get all nerdy about, you know, kilohertz or anything. You just follow your ear. So super easy to use also for beginners. The Mark III is different in a few ways. One of them is that it has higher voltage inside now, which means that now it's actually more punchy, more precise in the low end, which is exactly what we need in electronic music. So if you're going to get one of these, I would definitely recommend this one, the latest one, because it's more suitable for stuff that has a lot of strong, punchy low end. It's amazing to see the origin video behind it. You can feel sort of the entrepreneurial vibes of the people that were involved in setting this device up. So I'll link to that in the description so you can have a look. It's a very cool video. Plus he gives a fantastic explanation of how to use this device. There is a plug-in version available, or probably various. I know Plugin Alliance has one. I'm assuming probably also Universal Audio. So if you want to test out for a while to get a feeling for it, that's a good place to start. Yeah, other than that, I can definitely recommend this device, especially if it's like one of your first hardware units. It'll bring a big improvement to your sound, which is very easy to manage, and you can use it for playing live sets. So super cool for that. Are there any downsides to this device? I think the only one I can come up with is cost. You know, the hardware is definitely gonna cost you a lot more than a plug-in emulation or something like that. But other than that, there's a reason why this is one of the probably widest selling analog 19-inch 1HE devices probably in the world. Be interesting to see some numbers on that, but I know it's a lot of people have had this and used it over the years. Yeah, that is it for me today. I'm gonna play a bit more music through it, switching it in and out so you can have one final listen, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.